Hey there, just wanted to go over a final update on the Holy Strike build and give my thoughts and basically just give the pop of where I ended up with the build and a few other alternative routes that seem pretty good as well. To start with, I will say, actually very strong build, surprisingly, after swapping into crit. Uh, Reliably did 138 out of 138. Feared was no problem. Everything was super chill on the build. Mapping was good. Uh, the only thing that was kind of lacking for me was just the clear, really, in juiced maps. Like you aren't blowing up the screen or blowing things up off screen. Other than that, though, it was a pretty decent all-rounder uh, to start the league. I'll be moving on to another build, one that can actually utilize Headhunter, one that's not a minion build after farming up currency and things like that. But I did want to just give a final update on this. So I did end up moving entirely into crit. Now, I didn't end up fully invested. My minions on Pob only say 53%, but even half invested into crit, it was still an absurd amount more damage than just the league start version without any amount of crit. The main things I wanted to go over as far as things I tested and basically figured out. I was unsure if frostbreath even properly worked, but I bought like an insane T1 fractured lightning mace, and I used an essence for minion damage on it, and got triple T1 prefixes and crafted suffixes, and it still did less damage than this. So that definitely leads me to believe 100% this just works. Definitely correct to just use this item and stack added damage elsewhere. The Foulborn Frostbreath as well did a lot for helping make the crit swap easy and actually have some form of base crit. Um, Also, Aegis Aurora, great defensive layer while mapping, while sitting on full block cap for both. And I ended up getting a Foulborn one when they were still about the same price as normal one. I think they have gone up substantially since then, but being able to run reflect mods is very nice. One of the most important things for the build is to get at least +1 minion skill gems on your helmet. If you leave your skill gem at level 20, you only have 3 holy armaments, and going to 21 gives you that 4th one. So the second gem level here, not quite as important, it's just 12% more damage, but 12% more damage on the scaling of the gem, not overall, but it's still impactful. If you could get 2, that'd be nice, but 1 is all you need to functionally feel good. Everything else for the rest of the gear is still just basic life and res gear. Simple res and attack speed rings. I have accuracy on my gloves and my ring as well to solve the accuracy issues. Because the only other way to solve accuracy is probably a crafted rare with hits can't be evaded, but trying a bunch of different things, I just could not get more damage than using a frost breath. Per Quill's Toe, I was able to pick up a corrupted one with an additional curse application, which was a substantial increase to damage. I ended up putting in punishment. That's just a huge increase. As you can see in the POB, if I just take it off, boom. Obviously not cheating, I've reduced effective punishment to simulate half uptime. But yeah, great to be able to fit in extra aura. Those are the main 2 that matter, is Assassin's Mark and Punishment. Now your belt is probably one of the most important points here for scaling damage. If I take this off, you can see my minion attacks just go down almost 25%. Having 2 very strong eye jewels helps a ton. When going into the late game version, you want to try and get 3 mods on them. You want the lightning damage, the attack speed, and then the minions deal increased damage if you've used a minion skill recently. That is by far the best 3 mods you can get. The last one will be a prefix. You could get something like life, energy shield, and other added flat damage. Any of those are great. I picked up a brutal restraint as well. If you search for ones, you can find ones with minion damage, like all over this area. Like right here, I have 2 nodes. If I still had this wheel, I'd have a 3rd one, but I end up dropping this because this actually doesn't sustain endurance charges very well, since you are not the one killing the enemies most of the time. End up getting ailment immune, obviously. Got a void shock on boots and a jewel somewhere, and then use storm shroud. That's how I solved that in the late game. But other than that, it's just a simple, basically the same as the initial POB. I just like spec more into crit. The main scaling vectors for crit for minions here are this wheel here. And on my minion clusters, I also just got this at the back of every cluster. And these clusters are pretty expensive. I end up just actually doing something pretty neat is you can buy a different type of cluster with the fractured 35% increased effect, because at the time I didn't want to go for a fracture myself because it would have been more expensive, and I just bought a like attack damage one with maces or something, and then I used the new item, the fog, to swap it over to the minion damage one. And at that point in time, because none existed and the base large cluster jewel itself was so expensive, it ended up being this was the cheapest way to do it. And once you get fractured ink effect, or you can also fracture the attack and cast speed. Either is a win. And then you will harvest reforge crit, and you will always get vicious bite. You'll always have that at the back. It's a pretty easy craft. It is, you're not going for 4 mods or anything like that. The other ones I did get pretty lucky with. I ended up, when I was rolling them, I ended up getting energy shield on this one and energy shield on this one as well. So pretty lucky there. Yeah, other than that, the tree isn't much different from the original. Just the added crit stuff, more crit scaling, crit on the frostbreath, and the gem swap over to exemplar. Now, I tried a ton of different gem combos, and basically the one I ended up settling on was the 6 that I have here. So for mapping, I turn off elemental damage with attacks and throw in a melee splash. For mapping, this is just night and day difference in how your clear feels. And you also do gain single target when like cleaving packs of enemies on top of each other. So you can't get melee splash in like other really easy ways. Like Tribal Fury doesn't work with minions. Tested that. Additional strikes don't work with minions. And also it doesn't even seem like they use a strike skill. They have more like a sweep. So it's just a regular melee attack, it seems that they have. Now, they do work with multi-strike, so all of that, that is pretty much the setup. Just these 6 gems. I tried a ton. I got a lightning pen on my one of my holy strikes. That is probably like the 2nd or 3rd best option. The other 2 are going to be if you hit minion damage or critical strike damage on your coin skill that you are using on your 2020 gem. I think another good one would be, I mean, increased crit strikes would also be fine. But yeah, basically just those 3: lightning pen, crit damage, minion damage. Ruthless would also be fine if you want to roll red, but there are not many other red ones that are very good. So I was just rolling for blue. There are quite a few good options. Now, one last thing I would want to go over that I also tested and tried is a Doriani's prototype build. Now, if you don't know what this is, it just makes all enemies' lightning resistance equal to yours. So you buy some mirrored rings that people get from the reflecting mists, and you just get your lightning res down to negative 200. And I tried this out. I like sniped some cheap rings. I made a setup for it and ran it for a few hours. The damage was absurd. Like easily like 5x damage on top of like what is here. And honestly, the damage just felt great. But the downside is you are using Doriani's prototype. And if you do not take any of the avenues to convert all of your lightning damage, you are going to have a pretty bad time in general mapping. I think for bossing, it's totally acceptable. The only one I think you can't do is the Eater of Worlds, as he has a ton of lightning damage. And yeah, coming across a mana siphoner and just falling over was like not very fun. So I ended up just investing more into the build and swapping back to a normal setup, because Invert the Rules is very powerful already. So I think I probably would have tried to stay the Doriani setup if Invert the Rules didn't exist. This gem is absurdly powerful. It is 43% more damage against a boss with an average amount of resistance. A lot of bosses can go up to 75. A lot of mobs in your maps will cap their resistances when you're clicking altars for them, or just the map mods themselves. Monsters can easily end up resistance capped, and if that ends up the case, it is even more damage. But yeah, this skill gem is just absurd. I think it's mandatory on any LE damage build that is not running like a multiple curse setup to lower resistances. That is, I think, pretty much it. If you have any other questions, feel free to comment. Let me know.